Okay, I think we're live now. Hey guys,
Yay.
we are back for
Yay.
our low carb book club. We are continuing with the Obesity Code by Jason Fung, and I just have to share with all the viewers that I almost did not make this book club today because I was out shopping with my sister-in-law, and time just escaped me completely. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe it was the holiday. I'm in that kind of mood where I'm just relaxed and not doing my thing, but man, I barely made it. So I really appreciate you guys hanging with me, and um, you know, hopefully you don't think I'm too flighty.
No, stuff happens, and this was a holiday weekend.
It's the holidays, yeah.
It just felt so weird. I don't know. It's just nothing has felt right the last several days. I can't wait to get back into my, normal routine. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's see here. What chapters was it again?
8 and 9.
8 and 9. I'm going to have to pull my book up too. All right. So when do you guys want to start with chapter 8 and kind of give us a general gist of what went on in that chapter? And I'm going to open my book.
Yeah, I can. So chapter 8 was kind of picking up off of, we did chapter 7 before, which was insulin and the role of insulin in obesity. And he always leaves off with there's something else that's missing to make you want to read on. So chapter 8 was about cortisol and the effect of cortisol on insulin, which how they act together and the role that it plays in obesity. He talked about how they basically, on a short-term basis, they kind of have opposite effects.
Very, very long time, and we used to do them all.
Oops, sorry.
Because insulin drives energy and glycogen into storage, whereas to store for later use, right? Whereas cortisol is the stress hormone. And so when you're under short-term stress, it activates that fight or flight and it draws on those reserves. So the one point I thought was really interesting that he was talking about was you would think they would have the opposite effect. Whereas the insulin causes weight gain, you would think that the spikes in cortisol would cause weight loss, but it's not the case with prolonged cortisol exposure.
I remember thinking that too. It was like, wait a minute, it kind of seemed like it contradicted what my mind wanted to think it should do, put it that way.
Yeah, so, except if you think he did bring up prednisone. I mean, one thing he said is that cortisol is a steroid hormone. It's one of the glucocorticoids. So he brought up prednisone, and if anyone's been on prednisone or you know prednisone as nurses, weight gain is a side effect. So especially, it's not necessarily like short-term use of it is not necessarily going to put on a bunch of weight, but if you have to be on it, for a little 30 days or whatever, you're more likely to gain weight with more long-term use. So it was interesting that he talks about the prolonged stress. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was like on page 91 at the very top, he brought up this 1998 study. It showed that cortisol levels increase with self-perceived stress. So each person is that tells me each person is individual, right? It's like you may perceive your stress to be really high for yourself, whereas somebody else may be like, what's the big deal? But yet you're gaining weight, right? So,
and that was one of the tests that I told you guys I went to a functional medicine doctor, and that was one of the tests that we did not do that I would like to go back and have done was the cortisol. Can't remember the exact name of the test, but basically it checked your cortisol throughout the day. And I am just somebody who has always lived with like kind of just a low, I don't want to say a low level of stress, but like kind of a moderate amount of stress. And that was just my normal life. But I think that I have probably, contributed to some weight gain around the middle from cortisol being just chronically elevated, in that. And I'm trying to make myself, relax a little bit more and just try to, live my life a little bit differently as I get older, because I don't want to, continue that, and I feel it. I feel it in my shoulders. If you ever been walking around, you're just like, you feel like your shoulders are just up to here. And it's like, okay, you're stressed. You don't even know it because you're just doing the things, all the things.
All the time. I know I've had the cortisol test done, the saliva test, and it
Have
wasn't
you?
really, I mean, it didn't really show a whole lot, but I thought it was interesting that he said that it's the scalp hair analysis that's really the one that should be done, which I
Okay.
hadn't heard of.
What was the name of that one? Do you remember?
He just called it scalp hair analysis.
Yeah, he didn't. I don't think he had like a technical name for it,
Okay.
like a
I was
medical
thinking
term.
I was thinking he named one of them, but maybe, I'm always watching videos about stuff, so it may have been in somebody else's video that I saw it.
I'm just wondering, I mean, he mentioned both of those, the saliva test and scalp hair analysis. I'm just, wondering, it sounded like the scalp hair analysis one was for long-term exposure. So I don't know. Maybe it's good to do both of them.
Yeah, I could see that. I would definitely need the longer one. I can tell you what it would say though. I mean, it'd be ridiculous because I'm just always just go, go, go. And, I've gotten to a point where back a few months, well, I say a few months, it's probably been a year now. I was having a lot of migraines, and I think it was because I was just consistently in that stressed out state so much that if somebody would really, really scare me, or I would get, I would just get so scared easily. Like if somebody rang the door and I wasn't expecting, I'd be like, and that's not a normal reaction. That's like a hyper,
Your nervous
response.
system. Yeah, like hyperexcitability with your nervous system. Wow.
Yeah, it's really wild.
Almost like a PTSD type of thing.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if like that's I mean, I don't know what PTSD is like myself, but if that's kind of what people with PTSD would experience, because
Well,
they're always.
My daughter has PTSD.
Oh, does she?
Yeah. I mean, all my kids are adopted. She was in foster care. We got her at 5.5, so she had abuse in her birth home and in foster care. So she ended up, it came for her later when she was in her teens. But, she doesn't startle easily at all. But for her, it's flashbacks and generalized anxiety, but flashbacks. But I don't know if this like a high startle.
It was just so weird. It had to have been some kind of,
maybe
I'm sorry.
Just nervous system, maybe. Your nervous system was on edge or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine's dad was in Vietnam, and certain noises would cause a startle response. So it wasn't necessarily over everything, but there were just certain situations or certain noises that he would hear that would it was just this hypervigilance that he had. So it's just, that's why I made the comment, because it's just kind of reminded me of what he went through. Yeah. And the cortisol was, I mean, we all are society, and he went into this too about just the low grade or the persistent, like the cortisol would in our ancestors would build up in a crisis, like in an emergency situation. And now we just have this build up all the time. And over time, that causes that insulin. And it was kind of surprising. I mean, I've heard people talk about cortisol before, but when he said he started that chapter like he did the other one about insulin, about he could make you gain weight giving you cortisol.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Because before he said he can make us gain weight by giving us insulin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute. But then as he got into the mechanics of it, then it was like, oh, I see. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or not, but about the sleep in
Oh yeah,
relation,
that was
that is
really kind of
something that I
disaster.
kind of wonder about, because my sleep I know is not good, and it's not necessarily. I've got this sick cat, okay, and he's okay during the day, but for some reason he decides he's either hungry or needs to puke in the night. So it's like I have to get up for one reason or another, just at, in the middle of the night, and so my whole sleep cycle gets disrupted, and I don't normally pay too much attention to the Fitbit. I mean, I'm kind of curious, like I want to know how many steps, but it's not like I'm just tracking everything. But it gives me like poor marks for my sleep.
Well, he did
I'm
talk
like,
about
ooh.
that, as far as that it's sleep deprivation is another stressor on the body.
Mhm.
But it sounded like it was a pretty profound stressor, because he brought in some studies and
Yep.
information about how bad it is.
Yeah.
I know, and that's what really makes me wonder. So it's like, ooh, so I might. Well, and here's another thing that sort of, I did not get much sleep the night before I went in for my annual lab work. So my long-term stuff, like my A1C and my fasting insulin was good. And then my HDL and my triglycerides were great. But my fasting blood sugar that morning, now my appointment, I guess my blood was drawn at about 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'd been up for a while. And my fasting glucose that morning was at 110, which is not normal for me. But that's, but I've been going through that for a while now with my cat. And I haven't really checked my morning glucose because I've never really seen a need to do that. But now it makes me wonder.
Yeah.
But my fasting insulin was low, so I guess it's not really affecting it that much, but that can't be.
Well,
He
yeah, I
also
mean,
made a statement, though, about your stress, like you were talking about the perceived stress.
Mhm.
And he said the sleep and the sleep didn't seem to affect you if your perceived stress was low. And
yes,
yeah. And
yes,
so I'm like, well, I don't really see my life as stressful, really.
yeah. Sleep
It's not. I have my
deprivation
ups and
and
downs, but
stress the effect was dependent on your stress level.
mhm,
Because relaxed people that weren't under stress, were sleep deprived, didn't have the same effect.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's just so bizarre. All these things you have to consider.
Well, he did say, like at the bottom of 90, under conditions of chronic stress, glucose levels remain high, and there's no resolution to the stressor. So I don't know if maybe at
Mhm.
that point for you, the sleep deprivation was a stressor, and that's why your glucose levels were a little higher than usual.
That's possible. I mean,
Mhm.
it was really dumb because I actually had gone to a concert the night before and didn't go to bed until like 2 a.m.
Oh,
And it's not that I partied or anything, because I didn't. I was just up. And so then the next day was my appointment, and I just had no sleep, and I was just like running on adrenaline and stuff, because I was still pretty excited from the show. It
yeah.
was great. And it was funny because like about half the time when I get lab work done, about half the time there's a concert or some reason why I'm up late or something. So I'm just hoping and praying that the next time I have lab work done, it's just a nice, peaceful evening. And
Well, I wonder, like, we associate stress with negativity, right? And things that are negative. I wonder if good stressors, like a concert, like you said, is
yeah.
it's still kind of a stressor on your system, right? Because it's noise, it's activity, it's a little sensory overload, but it's fun. I
Mhm.
wonder if even that type of stressor could have an effect or not. He didn't even talk about that. He didn't say it has to be negative.
That's true.
You know, that that would be
That's
interesting.
true.
I did highlight something. I don't know. I thought maybe you guys could kind of weigh in on it. It was on page 91, kind of right in the middle. Um, where he was started the paragraph starting with the glucocorticoids cause muscle breakdown, but then he said adiponectin secreted fat cells, which normally increase insulin sensitivity, are suppressed by glucocorticoids. So it's like, and which obviously cortisol is a glucocorticoid.
Mhm.
And so secreted fat cells, I assume that's what happens when you're wanting to lose weight, is you secrete, I don't know, do you release this adiponectin when you're losing weight? But it says it normally increases insulin sensitivity, which I'm assuming means it would make it easier for you to lose weight. But if you're having cortisol, like, I wonder if this is maybe why some people struggle to lose weight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right.
You know, because it's
That
definitely, yeah. I mean, it's definitely like the corticoids are definitely counteracting. Even if your body is doing something that can help you become more insulin sensitive, it seems like the cortisol is counteracting that.
and because you're not doing anything to burn up that cortisol, so to speak, because with our ancestors, there was that quick boost of cortisol to get us out of a situation, like if we needed to run or fight,
Right.
then
It was
we
used.
would burn it off and we would use it and then it would go away. But it's kind of like a low grade, for lack of a better term, but it's a consistent grade that a lot of us have, especially like if we've got a really stressful job or just like my job is intense, but it can be stressful, I guess, but I don't hate it and I enjoy what I do. So I guess maybe I don't think I've got like a consistent stress that way. But I think if somebody has a job that they hate or they're in a relationship that's just tense all the time, maybe there's arguments or disagreements and stuff like that, things going on, that just having that happen over long periods, your cortisol is just constantly up and then it just breaks you.
Well, if you think
Yeah.
about it, compared to our ancestors, and not even like remote ancestors, even 50 years ago or so,
Mhm.
things were much quieter. I know the home I grew up in was very quiet because, I mean, we had like maybe 3 or 4 channels on the TV and hardly ever watched TV. And we didn't have
Mhm.
smartphones and the computers and all of these things that stimulate us all the time. And I don't think it's healthy to be constantly stimulated.
Mm-mm.
So I don't know if
Yeah.
maybe our threshold has changed as far as how we respond to additional, like maybe our baseline stress level is higher than things used to be. So maybe, it doesn't take nearly as much to kind of put us over that edge.
In other
Okay.
words, since we're going through it all the time, and then there's just this little bit, and what would be normally a little bit of additional stress would put somebody over. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
like
saying?
maybe that's why Kim was like suddenly startled at things that she wasn't startled at
Yeah.
before. Because we have this constant, steady stimulus around us, which maybe is not necessarily a negative stressor, but it may be just a stressor to our
Yeah.
brains and to our systems, and sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot to kind of put us over the edge, stress wise.
So I wanted to read like the first little part about cortisol, just for the benefit of anybody who hasn't read the book. Just because I
Mhm.
think it'll make more sense what we're talking about if I do this. But so cortisol, basically, he starts out like we were saying by saying that he could make anyone fat by prescribing prednisone, which is a synthetic version of the hormone cortisol. And then he goes on to say, cortisol is the so-called stress hormone, which mediates, whoops, hold on. Okay. Which mediates the fight or flight response, a set of physiological responses to perceived threats. Cortisol, part of the class of steroid hormones called glucocorticoids, is produced in the adrenal cortex. In Paleolithic times, the stress that led to the release of cortisol was often physical, for instance, being chased by a predator. Cortisol is essential in preparing our bodies for action to fight or flee. And then once released, the cortisol substantially enhances glucose availability, which provides energy for the muscles, which you would need if you were going to flee from a big tiger or something. Not that you'd get away from them, but very necessary in helping us to run and avoid being eaten. All available energy is directed towards surviving the stressful event. Growth, digestion, and other long-term metabolic activities are temporarily restricted. Proteins are broken down and converted to glucose, gluconeogenesis, like we talked about last time. And then the vigorous physical exertion soon often followed burning up these newly available sources of glucose. And shortly thereafter, we were either dead or the danger was past and our cortisol decreased back to its normal low levels. And that's the point. The body is well adapted to a short-term increase in cortisol and glucose levels. Over the long term, however, a problem arises. So basically what we're talking about now. And, you know, I have heard that just a low level of increased, you know, stress and therefore increased cortisol can just kind of like, they say like burn up your adrenals, you know, which I've heard mixed stuff on whether that's actually a thing or not. A lot of mainstream doctors will tell you that that's not a thing.
Right.
But, you know.
Well, like what's fascinating is he was talking about Cushing's syndrome. And, you know, just as examples of, like there are some diseases where, like, if you produce too much cortisol, it causes the weight gain. And then others where if you don't have it, then it causes you to lose weight.
Like
so I thought that was fascinating that because he was talking about in 1912, he was describing a woman who was 23 and she had weight gain, excessive hair growth, and loss of menstruation. And so the blood sugars and diabetes were also present. So it's like, I don't think they knew that at the time, though, about because they didn't have the test. But he's just saying in up to 1/3 of Cushing's cases, high blood sugars and overt diabetes are also present, which means that it's working in that mechanism that he's talking about, in where the sugar increases. And then thus when the sugar increases, here comes insulin trying to get that sugar down.
And then it says that prednisone increases glucose levels by 6.5% and insulin levels by 20%. So that's like, it really makes your insulin get up there. And then over time, insulin resistance develops. From that.
Well, and he mentioned too, like with the Cushing syndrome and all the observations about the Cushing syndrome, about how the abdominal obesity was prevalent, that you tend to gain weight in your belly.
Yeah. You can always tell, well, maybe not always, but I don't know about you, Lynn, but there are people that I'll just like on the street, I'm just like, okay, that person definitely has Cushing's. I mean, because it's very recognizable. Of course, it can also be kind of vague too, but there's a certain body type that it's just, you know, it makes you wonder. That test was called the Dutch test, and I think it actually tests for more than just cortisol. It tests for like a lot of different hormones, sex hormones, and cortisol and such.
Was that
I didn't have it.
Was that the hair analysis test?
No. Let's see here. The Dutch test looks at sex hormones and their metabolites, the overall I can never say that word, diurnal pattern of free cortisol, and the total and distribution of cortisol metabolites, in addition to OATs, OATS, which provide insight into nutritional deficiencies, oxidative stress, gut dysbiosis, melatonin, neuroinflammation, and more. I don't think I had that one. I'm going to have to look back at my functional medicine packet that I had.
That traditional doctors would not do.
Oh no, I've never heard of a traditional doctor doing that.
Yeah.
other than my doctor, she's a traditional doctor who is now a functional medicine practitioner. And I mean, they are priceless. If you can find one of those, if you have any significant problems, I mean, especially like what you were experiencing, Lynn. Have you seen a functional medicine doctor?
My primary doctor is actually a naturopathic doctor.
Okay, so that's
I found a naturopathic doctor to be much more helpful than my regular doctor with with just basically anything.
Or
pardon me?
Do you have MCAS? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the allergist who diagnosed me was pretty useless with treatment. It was like, here, let's throw a couple drugs at you and nothing. Whereas the naturopathic doctor was, let's identify the triggers. Let's do additional tests. They did a mycotox test, which came back positive. And I think I may be one of those people that doesn't clear mold, because we had a mold specialist come and do a thorough mold inspection in our home, and it was really clean. So so we have still a list of tests to run, just to kind of make sure we catch everything that might be triggers. But regular doctors, the regular doctor just wasn't even going to go down that road.
Now, is that, or do you have the MTHFR mutation? Do you know?
I haven't been tested for it. That's the one where you don't clear out mold.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It can cause a lot of things, but
we might test for.
So, I think I saw something about that on my genetic genie report, but I'm going to have to look at all that stuff again.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the results of my retest for the mold. Because it wasn't a full detox, but it was a kind of, I took glutathione, and then he wanted to go the kind of the natural approach to have me kind of try to sweat it out. And so infrared saunas are the better option, but I can't do a sauna because heat is a trigger for my MCAS. And so, but I can do like a hot bath because
but wait, if it's infrared, does it actually heat, or?
I heard it kind of makes you feel hot inside. And that's actually worse for me than external heat, even though external heat's not great. Like, it's really warm where I am and my face is red. Like, fortunately my throat's not swelling, but my face was not red before I came upstairs to my loft, and it's like hot up here. And so, but this is a good thing about like a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine doctors. They're going to have this arsenal of tests to run that your traditional doctor, would never even suggest.
I love mine. Now, you will pay.
Okay, I was just going to say, your insurance is going to cover it.
Just to tell you, just to give you an idea, so that you have some idea of what the cost would be like. Just for like the basic, like usually the ones around here I've seen have been like usually like a 6-month package minimum. And basically you pay them, I paid them like over $300 a month. It was probably about $350 a month for 6 months. And then the testing was on top of that. So it's expensive. Okay. But when you get as sick as, there's a lot of people that are more sick than I was, but when you get something that's like a mystery illness that you cannot figure out, they are priceless. Especially if you get one that is actually, a medical doctor on top of that, then they've got the best of both worlds, and they can, combine their knowledge there and truly figure something out.
And some like the naturopathic doctor just that I see was in a group practice. He just kind of went on his own. And so now he's like, doesn't take insurance, but the group practice, they took insurance. And so I was able to get office visits covered and stuff. And, more of the routine type of lab work. But
Well, and you can file some of it on your insurance, like the lab work stuff. A lot of it you could actually file and see what they would pay. But at the time I had an HSA, which they don't really pay anything anyway. It's basically like you get a discount because it's tax-free money. And we didn't go to the doctor a whole lot other than, my little issues that I had, which I seem to have kind of cured with my diet for the most part. So
yeah, isn't that
I hate
amazing?
that I wasted that money, but I mean, it was beneficial too in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. But yeah, one thing I highlighted too on page 93 was about the stress. He mentioned stress causes weight gain, something that many people have intuitively understood despite the lack of rigorous evidence. And he says stress contains neither calories nor carbohydrates, but can
Mhm.
still lead to obesity. And something about that popped out. It's like we always want to blame our obesity on our food, right?
Yeah. And that's why calories in does not equal calories out. Or,
Right. The stress makes
that's
a
why that's not the
difference.
case, because stress hormones play a huge role. And I think I've always like intuitively known this. I find it wild
Right.
how like you'll know things to be true, and you'll know that what the doctors have told you is not entirely true because you've experienced it, and you just know, but it's like you don't know how. You don't have the level of knowledge that it would take to explain it, put it that way.
Right.
And then when you finally come across it and you learn, you're like, oh, this is exactly what I was talking about. I
Well,
feel so
yeah.
validated. I'm
And
not crazy.
he brings in the clinical studies, and he brings in, I like his practical examples, like
Uh-huh.
things that we already know. Like, okay, you've got this medication that causes weight gain, or this other medication that causes weight loss.
Yeah.
Why?
Hmm.
Doesn't that principle carry over to, to helping us understand how our bodies work? So
Yeah.
like with the prednisone, so
Mhm.
it's a glucocorticoid, it's a corticosteroid. It's in that class of medications that may cause weight gain, and our body produces cortisol, which does doing the same thing. So he brings good examples that it's like I can relate
Yeah.
to that. Yeah. And was it in this chapter where he talked about oh, it is. Page 93. This is like right after what I just wrote. Stress reducing is difficult but vitally important. Contrary to popular belief, sitting in front of the television or computer is a very poor way to relieve stress. Instead, stress relief is an active process. There are many time-tested methods of stress relief, including mindfulness meditation, yoga, massage therapy, and exercise. Studies on mindfulness intervention found that participants were able to use yoga, guided meditations, and group discussions to successfully reduce cortisol and abdominal fat. So I thought that was
Wow.
really good to point out, because what do we like? I can't tell you how many times to unwind I've put on a movie or been surfing on my phone or something.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was really good that he said that it's actually something you have to get up and do something.
That
Yeah.
makes
That's why
sense,
that's
though.
where those walks come in handy, Carrie.
Yeah.
Those walks you do.
Oh man, I have to have them too. Like I feel lost without my walk. So like I meditate for 30 minutes. Well, it's about 35 minutes is the meditation that I do. And then after that I go and take a walk, and I just can start my day right then. It just
Yeah.
in that frame of mind, but it just makes such a difference. And walking has always been my favorite exercise. So like hiking and things like that. But it's just the discipline in getting up every morning and doing it. I think in large part, it doesn't feel like it's been a chore to do it because of
Yeah.
my diet.
I may be doing my
Yeah.
walks wrong because I don't meditate. I don't do meditative walks. I put in power metal.
Well, now what I do now for my walking, like I'll meditate first for 35 minutes. Then I get up and take my walk, and I don't wear headphones. I listen to the birds, just look at my surroundings. And my goal is to get up and walk before very many people were up moving around. So it's a little more difficult this time of year because it gets daylight later. So like I was excited when the time
Yeah.
changed initially but now it's creeping again. And so it's getting daylight a little later and later. And so I'm going to have to start cutting my walks short because I have to start work at 7.
Yeah.
But doing something is, yeah.
And can I just interject that I think it's hilarious how you can't judge a book by its cover, because who would ever think that all 3 of us would listen to metal?
Right.
Now it's not my first. It's not my first and foremost. Actually, what I've liked my whole life has been rap.
That's funny.
So like, who would know? Like, if you saw us out in public, you would be like, oh, those middle-aged women, they're not listening to listening to metal or anything exciting.
I don't like dark metal, but I like symphonic metal and and power
That's so
metal.
funny. Did I tell you about my son, Lynn?
Yeah,
I have conversations so often about this stuff.
I think I put a comment on the first book club video with a suggestion for the Sabaton, the group that does metal history. Did he ever watch any of that?
I don't know. I'll have to look at it again, but
They're
loves
so
Sabaton.
good.
I'm sure he's probably, if it has to do with Sabaton, he's probably seen it because he loves Sabaton.
They're from Sweden. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. If he knows Sabaton, then yeah, he's probably already familiar.
Yeah, and there's another band. I'm trying to remember the name of that one. He would kill me because I swear he talks about it all the time, and I'm just like, okay, it's my memory is not as good as it used to be, but
oh my gosh. We should probably move on to chapter 9, huh?
Oh, wait. I wanted to talk about sleep a little bit more before we go. Okay, so I just like to read like little excerpts out of here so that people who, I don't want to read too much to where they're not going to buy the book, but just, a little bit so they can get a little taste of it. So they said sleep deprivation is a major cause of chronic stress today, and sleep duration has been steadily declining. In 1910, people slept 9 hours on average. However, recently, more than 30% of adults between 30 and 64 years of age report getting fewer than 6 hours of sleep per night, which I am guilty of. Shift workers are especially prone to sleep deprivation and often report fewer than 5 hours of sleep per night. I am also guilty of that, and I am a shift worker.
You work graveyard?
No, I work day shift, but
yeah.
I mean 7A to 7P 3 days a week, which it sounds heavenly when you're younger, but then when you get older, it's like, that's
really
what I does a number on you.
When I was working in the hospital, that was me too. 12 out of 3 12s.
Population studies consistently link short sleep duration and excess weight, generally with 7 hours being the point where the weight gain starts. Sleeping 5 to 6 hours was associated with more than 50% increased risk of weight gain. 50%. Do you hear me? Oh my God. The more sleep deprivation, the more weight gained. Y'all. Mm-hmm. I've always thought sleep was just a joke. Like, I wish I would have listened to,
quality of sleep makes a difference too, because I had quite a while before I got diagnosed with severe sleep apnea back in 2008. And when I had the sleep study, like even when I thought I was asleep, the doctor said I was not, like there's 5 levels of sleep and I wasn't getting past the 2nd level. Mm-hmm. And you don't get into actual like restorative sleep until you're, I think maybe level 4. And so the if you have anything that can track your sleep, like as far as the levels of sleep, then that would be something that would be good to do, is really find out, is your sleep good quality? Are you getting restorative sleep, not just you're unconscious?
Yeah, that's a valid point. And then like right after that, this is where there again, I just found this very interesting. It says, interestingly, sleep deprivation under low stress conditions does not decrease leptin or increase hunger, which suggests that it is not the sleep loss per se that is harmful, but the activation of the stress hormones and hunger mechanisms. So that just is like,
It's
wow.
all about the hormones, always.
Yeah.
Seems
That's
to be
crazy.
an underlying connection here. Hormones, hormones, hormones.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to the next chapter. You want to start us out with that,
You want to do that, Carrie?
Lynn?
Sure. Well,
Carrie, either one.
he starts talking about the birth of the whole Atkins thing. And of course, we all know that the low carb went way back to Banting and even before that. And so, yeah, I was making sure I got the year right. Okay. Yeah. Atkins they claimed fat in 1963. And then he went back and looked at the literature and stuff and found that low carb actually works. And so he was excited about it, which it sounds very much like, some other doctors in prior history, they it worked for them. Right. And so they wrote those books, like A Letter of Corpulence, for example, was one of the ones. So anyway, so then it just talks about where, of course, the establishment at the time was on this whole kick about the fat causing heart disease and heart attacks. And of course, since you've only got 3 macronutrients, and if you give up carbohydrates, and what else is left? And then it talked about iterations of the low carb diet. One of them was actually a high protein diet. But so anyway, it just goes into the wars about that, and that the low carb diet, specifically like the way Atkins did it, beat out all the other diets. But there were 2 things, like, there were several studies that they mentioned about that they would, like with the Mediterranean diet and the low fat diet and various ones, that the low carb diet beat them, especially the low fat calorie restricted diet. I mean, low carb beat it every time. Then he talked about, though, like long term, and this is where I of course, it's there again, it's kind of anecdotal, and I don't know. I'm going to have to read more into that and like actually look at the studies and stuff. But like he was saying that as time went on, that the low carb and low fat, like they all had the same failure rate. And I'm just like, I'm not so sure that but there again, I mean, it's documented in the study, and I don't know, like they said, over a 5-year time period. So he was saying that basically as a diet long term, people didn't stick with it. And I understand that that's probably true to an extent, but I just seem to know of more people who tend to stick with low carb, even if they're not as strict low carb as they were.
Yeah.
It's like when they do slide off of it for a while, they don't really get back to where they were previously, like with the low fat diet, for example. And then if you go off of it and you're off of it for 6 months, you might gain, say, 20 of the 40 that you lost, but you're not gaining 50 like you would have with the low fat. So and then he also talks too about like the Okinawans, and I'm thinking to myself now, maybe some of the information didn't come out at the time of this book, and I'm going to have to go back and read about that too, because I thought the Okinawan data was proven to be false when he was talking about how much carbohydrate.
Will you go over that? Do you have it in front of you? What
What
page it was?
Yeah, what page was that?
It was page 105 where he brought up the Okinawans, and then he had the graph on page 104 showing the total carbohydrate intake and the sugar intake of the 4 countries: the UK, the US, Japan, and China.
I know he was talking about sugar, but talking about like the overall, all the carbs, like in other words, basically it sounded like they didn't hardly eat any meat. And I am thinking that there was information that came out later.
Yeah,
But I could be totally wrong that
it
said
says
that they ate more meat than what had been reported in the study.
oh, because this
Oh,
I
says
don't
that
know.
the natives of the Japanese island of Okinawa eat a diet that is nearly 85% unrefined carbohydrates. The dietary staple
Yeah.
is sweet potato. They eat 3 times as many green and yellow vegetables, but only 25% of the sugar consumed by residents of nearby Japan. And despite the high intake of carbohydrates, there's virtually no obesity, and the average body mass index is only 20.4. They are one of the longest lived peoples in the world, with more than triple the rate compared to nearby Japan of people living past 100 years.
and
Yeah,
you
so
know,
I
I
know
think
that
it
they
goes.
had,
I'm
oh,
sorry. Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, that
No,
they
go
had
ahead.
less sugar, like less refined sugars. But I was just thinking that because see, that's the argument that the vegans use all the time. Well, look at Okinawans, for example. And I thought that there was analysis done that while they ate a higher percentage of carbs, that there was meats and stuff that wasn't included in that. But I could have dreamed that. So don't hold me to it. But I
So,
just thought that was
all studies aside,
yeah.
it still goes back to the thing that I think we all, I mean, I don't want to say we all feel this way, but I know I feel this way. And I've heard other people in the low carb community talk about it. Low carb is right for us. It works for us. But I don't necessarily think it's the only way that you can lose weight.
Mhm.
Like some of the other low carb doctors, I think the vegans are actually on the right track,
Yeah.
as long
Right.
as they're not eating all the processed stuff. I think, what I want my children to know is that if you eat whole, real food, you're going to feel better. And do 80-20 if you're not willing to do any kind of diet, or you're younger and you don't have to do any kind of diet. 80% of the time, try to eat whole, real food and make your recipes from real ingredients.
Mhm.
Whether you eat meat, whether you don't eat meat, that's your business. But all the processed carbs, like I feel like that's what is doing it, for the
Well,
most part, with
one
the
of the
stress
things,
levels too, and then the processed carbs and,
yeah, he talked about the wheat and
Yeah.
corn, and I
Mhm.
was really intrigued by that because he said he was trying to just basically explain possibly why the Okinawans might be healthier with their carbohydrate consumption. And he said that the one possibility is that there is an important difference eating rice versus wheat. That Asians tend to eat rice, whereas Western societies tend to take their carbohydrate as refined wheat and corn. It is also possible that changes in Western obesity rates are related to changes in the variety of wheat we are eating. Dr. William Davis, author of Wheat Belly and New York Times bestseller, suggests that the dwarf wheat that we eat today
Mhm.
may be far different from the original wheat. So I'm curious about
Yeah.
that because, that could be a key as to maybe it's our
I
Mhm.
think that's a big key.
I
agriculture
think it is
messed
too.
up our food.
Yeah. We try to make everything so quick and easy to make. And, if we would just settle down, our cortisol would settle down. And if we would take the time to make the food, it used to be like a whole process. You would think in the morning at, 7 a.m., what am I going to make for dinner? And some of us still do. I'm not really guilty of that, but anyway, some people still do. But, I remember my grandmother thinking, like, well, what are we going to have for dinner? And it was a whole
Yep.
process. Like, it was a whole, like, we've almost lost, like, kind of the joy of just living and doing the tasks that have to be done in the day to live,
Mhm.
I
and,
think
and
we have
there's,
other convenience options so that we don't have to plan ahead if we don't
yeah,
want to. And it's really easy to just go with what's convenient. And maybe
yeah,
that's because we're just too busy. We're very busy and we do have those stressors just from all the activities swirling around us all the
yeah.
time.
And it makes you like, for example, I'm a prime example of how this happens. You get to doing too much. You're just doing too much,
Mhm.
and then you go out and you forget you have a book club at 5 o'clock.
Well, you have too much fun shopping. That's what.
I mean, but that's a perfect example of like it makes you forgetful. If
Yep.
you have that high level of stress after so long, you just like your brain's just mush. You just can't remember anything anymore.
Yeah, really true. Well, yeah, one thing that was interesting that he brought up with all these studies, and he did bring up a lot of studies in this chapter,
Mhm.
was that the American Medical Association studies were the goal of them was to prove Atkins wrong. And by comparing all these different diets, and it ended up resulting in the opposite. It proved him right, but nothing changed. And they still continued to promote their low fat diet, which was kind of crazy. And he mentioned
That
too,
is.
yeah, he mentioned too, many physicians, this is even after they proved that the Atkins was right, was good, many physicians still felt that low carb was simply the latest in a long line of failed dietary fads. And so they just continued their whole thing of blame the patient.
And then
Yeah.
they came out with their own little thing. Did you see that?
Yes, the
It was
no-fat diet, a personal plan for healthy weight loss. Yes, it says it's only mildly ironic that while condemning other diets, the American Heart Association would recommend the only diet, which is low fat, repeatedly proven to fail.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, we're going to make fun of every other diet, but come try ours.
Right, and they called it the low fat religion was enshrined in the medical community, and it did not tolerate disbelievers.
That's
And
true.
it still doesn't,
Yeah.
honestly. It's still, I mean, I can't say that 100%. We're making some progress,
There's
but
baby
for the
steps
most
in the
part,
right direction.
yeah. But for the most part, like people still, I mean, not even talking about just telling people that you just eat meat, but even if you tell them like you're doing keto, but what about all that fat? It's like, oh
Right.
God.
I guess I may be a little cynical by nature,
Me
but
too.
learning all this stuff makes me even more cynical of all of our official health agencies, that if
Oh,
they would
yeah.
downright ignore studies and promote something that has been proven to fail about this, what else are they promoting that is not good for us that I don't know about?
Yeah.
Oh, when
Well, I mean,
Harvard says that eating red meat is linked to type 2 diabetes, that's when I'm just like, I ain't listening to another thing they ever say.
mm-mm,
I mean,
mm-mm,
because that just your body doesn't work that way.
no. I mean,
And
anybody who's eaten meat for any amount of time knows that that's not
yeah, and
true.
it's just like, but I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like a Babylon Bee thing or something when I first saw that. I
Or the
really
onion, huh?
did.
The onion.
I thought it was, yeah, I mean, I just thought it was a joke. And then I was like, oh
Mm-mm.
my gosh,
Like they're
they,
serious.
yeah, they really released this. I was like, this is
It's
terrible.
just unbelievable. But like the problem with the doctors that, like your personal doctor that you go see every year, they are so like the system is so screwed up where
Yeah.
they're like having 15 minutes for a patient that needs 45 probably. That they're just like run ragged and they don't have time. Like the
Right.
last thing they want to do when they get off work at the end of the day after jumping through all the hoops of insurance and Medicare and all this stuff is to read studies. Like
Yeah.
that, it's just not going to happen. So
And
unless
it's
they
not,
learn it at a conference or something, they're
yeah.
probably not going to.
And it's not just, even if they did, it's not just like, oh, I learned something new, so let me just implement this necessarily with my patients. They're in medical groups, so they have to
Yeah.
combat their protocols and all of their
Mhm.
guidelines that are put out by their medical group. They have to be willing to fight back. And
Yeah.
that's a challenge. I mean, I've fought back on guidelines for nursing before when the evidence doesn't support it, and it's a lot of work over
Mhm.
and above your normal job.
And they not only make the guidelines, but then they, Lynn, you'll probably remember this, but they make you check all the boxes that you
Yeah.
did all that stuff.
Yes.
And it'll be something completely ridiculous that does not need to be done right now. And you got to stop what you're doing and go and, oh, yes, I put all the, caps on the end of the thing. I mean, like, sure, is that great to do? Yeah, but do you need to do it right this second? They want you to do it in a timely fashion. You have to have all the documentation to support it, or else you're not going to get funding from Medicare or whatever. It's just,
Oh yeah,
it's
that's a big
exhausting.
factor. Yeah. Yeah, it's really the insurance companies that tell the hospitals how to operate.
It is.
Because that's who they get paid by. Just said they had a study where meat is found to not feed cancer and actually help to heal. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's true.
I definitely wouldn't think it would ever feed it.
Interesting.
Because cancer is fed by sugar and what's the other thing, Lynn?
Yeah.
I'm drawing.
I didn't say glutathione, but hold on.
The glutathione is actually good for you. But it sounds like it.
Yeah, I think I just used the wrong word. It's
I'm drawing
sugar
a blank.
and yeah, I know. This is my stressed brain. It's like I know it, but it's like not sugar.
Good luck Googling
Somebody help
it.
us out here.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not going to find it because it's not.
Give it to you.
Because it's not a mainstream idea.
Yeah.
Dang it. Let's see. Oh my gosh, that's going to drive me crazy. Oh well.
If you figure it out,
okay,
put it
continue
in the
on.
comment. If you figure it out, put it in the comments after we,
Why did I say glutathione? Yeah. I don't know why I said that.
It's something it's similar though.
It sounds similar to me.
Yeah, it's something you're talking. I can't come up with it off the top of my head either. So
okay,
let me look through here all these.
All right.
Notes.
So anybody want to kind of round out the chapter?
Well, going back to what Carrie was saying about the longer term studies show that the Atkins diet failed to confirm the much hoped for benefits, and that the low fat in the Atkins group had lost and then regained weight at virtually the same weight. So this was over time. So this kind of leads into his whole thing that he does every chapter, right? There's still a missing component. One of the things that I thought of though when I was reading this was it seems like in the scientific and medical community, it's like they want to throw out the baby with the bathwater in essence. It's like, well, okay, over the long term, like people had results, but they regained the weight. So let's just throw it out instead of going, okay, there's got to be a missing element here. And I think that's what Dr. Fung actually is going to do is he says, okay, well, let's just continue and find out why. Instead of throwing out the whole idea of this being unsuccessful, troubleshoot, right? Figure out why did people regain the weight, especially when it was actually a really healthy, good for you diet. Yeah. And it's sad because then Atkins' organization ended up filing for bankruptcy. Like that didn't. I feel like that didn't have to happen.
No, but they did everything. When I say they, I mean, it was just the whole establishment did everything that it could do to bring them down. To just basically, if you admitted that you were doing Atkins, then, you were like a doctor would just like poo-poo you, and dismiss you and scold you or whatever. And
Arlene said glutamine.
Yes. Thank you. See, now I don't feel crazy because I'm like, it sounds like glutathione.
Yes, it does sound like glutathione, but I know it's not glutathione.
Yeah. So sugar or cancer feeds on either glutamine or sugar.
Right.
And let's see here. Okay, so glutamine is an amino acid that's produced by the body and found in food. It's the most abundant amino acid in the body and is building block for proteins. Glutamine also helps with the immune and digestive system.
So do they does it have a
So
synergistic response with sugar?
okay, so I understand. Hold on 1 second, real quick. Sorry. I understand now where they're getting that meat causes cancer, because glutamine is found in beef, chicken, fish, milk, eggs, beans, and cabbage. And that's where that's their, explanation for it.
Yeah, but yeah, that makes sense. But here's the thing, though, when they test you, like for example, for a tumor, though, they use glucose
Yeah.
because they like it and they light up with it. So it's like, and of course, I've watched some of like Dr. Siegfried, I think is how you say his name, and I've still got a lot more to watch to understand what all he's talking about. But it just makes so much sense when I've seen him interviewed about the whole cancer thing and starving it by, going like basically carnivore to get rid of it.
And I mean, there's a lot, like you're saying, there's a lot more to it than that. And that's another rabbit hole that we could go down.
Yeah.
But right now that would just,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
I bet sugar though is a key there, because I'd be really surprised if when they came to the conclusion about the glutamine, if they actually did a study of people that were on a zero sugar diet.
Yeah. We need to that needs to be one of our topics that we jot down for later, like further looking into and discussion. And
Yeah.
because I know that I've listened to lots and lots of lectures about sugar and cancer and just cancer in general from low carb experts. Like we're talking about like, doctors, like high level doctors talking about it, and researchers. They always say it's the sugar. So, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, obviously. Well, they like to draw conclusions because one element is associated with something, and so they'll jump to a conclusion about it. And
well, yeah, it's like the whole cholesterol thing. I mean, and you get back to the fireman analogy. The firemen are at the fire, but they didn't cause it. They're trying to put it out. So there might be, well, there is cholesterol, in the, there's atherosclerosis, but the cholesterol didn't cause it. They're trying to patch it up.
Yeah.
Trying to fix it.
Yeah. Well, the sugar is the key.
And the sugar makes it happen to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that one thing he mentions at the top, as far as like he said, the results of gaining weight back, he said it's because food is a celebration and that we want to indulge. So I could see this kind of leading into his whole, feasting time and fasting time,
Yeah.
So.
And he said again somewhere in one of these chapters about about the equal amounts of time. I remembered him stressing that before, and I guess that's in a perfect situation where like you should do that from the beginning, basically, before you get too metabolically unhealthy, half your time feasting and half your time fasting, or those windows, but then once you're past that point, like most of us who are on a low carb diet are, then you need to do like way more to get you, back on track. Like if you just like pigged out on Thanksgiving and you ate a bunch of stuff that you weren't supposed to, that you're going to have to do a lot of fasting to burn through, those reserves of let's see here, where your stored sugar reserves, and get back on track, basically.
Yeah, and I will tell you that I didn't go overboard by any means, but I did make a conscious decision to have sweet potatoes and mashed potatoes. And so my daughter didn't have any mashed potatoes for some weird reason. So I ate a big Craig bowl full of sweet potatoes, and it made me sleepy.
Uh-huh.
But this weekend I haven't felt sick because my daughter was worried about me because she knows how I am very diligent. And she was like, and she saw me sitting there at her house. I only live like a couple miles from her house, but she saw me sitting there like looking like I was high or something. And she was like, Mom, are you okay?
Wow.
So I went ahead and I went home because I knew I was going to crash. So,
Yeah.
but the last 2 days or last 3 days, really, this weekend, I have felt completely out of sorts. So even though I wasn't sick, it didn't like make me feel ill, but it did mess me up. And I'm like, okay, well, I know that on Christmas, I'm just not doing it. And of course, one thing too, I shouldn't have eaten that big of a bowl of it.
Yeah.
That
So we
probably
didn't even
didn't
talk about
help.
that. We jumped right into this and we didn't even talk about like Thanksgiving was here.
Yep.
What did everybody do? Did you make a conscious
I-
decision to do something?
I actually did. So my husband can eat more than I can on the he's carnivore too, but I have to keep it really low histamine. So I made deviled eggs, and I made the little, like in my muffin tin, these little beef cup thingies where I put the ground beef seasoning, with just salt, and then I put a little shredded cheese and then a egg yolk. And I made a bunch of those and I bake them for 30 minutes. And then I made for both of us a pot roast. So he ate all three and I just had a plate of pot roast, only seasoned with salt. And that's what I had.
Well, I made a conscious decision to eat some mashed potatoes, which usually don't bother me too bad. Oh, my throat's growling. I hope that didn't come across on the on the sound. But anyway, but I do have a bit of a headache today from where I continued the trend yesterday, and I make this corn casserole, and I ate some of that, and ate some more mashed potatoes, and so actually not last night, but the night before, I was laying in bed, and all of these aches just came back, and like my postnasal drip came back, and I was thinking, oh my God, what have I done to myself? And I didn't even do that much. Like I didn't have any wheat. I didn't have like anything really that I didn't have anything I thought was like super bad for me, like in my sensitivities. But I mean, my arms like right in here and like close to my hips, but it didn't feel like it was actually the hip joint. It was really weird, just aching like in my bones. So yeah, that makes it a lot easier to throw the rest of those leftovers away.
Yeah.
I didn't take it. Now I'm going to say it was tempting to bring some of those sweet potatoes home, but I didn't bring any home. And I'm glad I didn't because I would feel a lot worse.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my gosh, this is, and it's not that I felt there again, it's not like I was sick or just anything like that, but it's like almost like my mood is off.
Oh, that was another thing.
My
I felt
mood is just not
depressed.
right. It's just like
That's
I am not
crazy.
me. And it's just that's the only thing that's changed because my routines have stayed the same. I mean, everything that I've done has stayed the same except for eating those stupid sweet potatoes.
I know. It's crazy. Like it does. It makes like I felt my mood was just kind of a couple days ago, and I'm like, oh my God, I wonder if that's from the food.
It's still not quite right for me today. It's better, but it's still not quite right. I'm still just a little
same, as evidenced by me not remembering I had a book club.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because like before, I know leading into the holidays, of course when we're on this diet, we think, what are we going to do? I really started thinking about like why I associate not eating certain foods with feeling deprived. And that I'm going to be deprived if I don't eat all of the feast and the pies and everything. And I just worked on changing my mindset about what I associate with feeling deprived. to not being about food, but being, I'm going to feel deprived if I feel horrible afterwards and I can't go do things. I'm going to feel deprived of my health if I mess up my gut or my body aches set back in. And that really seemed to help me just make that decision that I'm not going to allow myself anything. And so that really helped. I'm going to do the same thing for Christmas. I'm just going to just remember, okay, what does feeling deprived need to be for me? And not make it about food.
Yeah. And I mean, also, it's just like once you feel so bad for so many times after you eat something, it's like, oh gosh, eventually it's gonna get through my thick skull that you just can't have that anymore. And I've done it with a lot of things now, and I'm okay with a lot of things that I never thought I'd be okay with not eating, like donuts. Hello, that was my favorite. I mean, I joke around. I've actually cried over donuts before, and I'm not exaggerating. Ask
Wow.
my husband. I had a meltdown in the garage because when I was going to see that functional medicine doctor, she told me, "You're going to have to stop eating wheat." And I'm like, I've not eaten bread for years. I can do without all that stuff, but I have to have donuts. I really felt like I had to have donuts. And so I was talking to my husband about it, and I was just like breaking down. Like I was having like just a breakdown about the whole thing. Like it was a mourning period. And donuts was like the top of the list.
I
So
almost
I
had
always
that.
joke
I
around
almost
about
had that when I had to give up coffee.
I
Because
mean,
I ended up giving
you're
up coffee.
emotionally tied to these foods. Like it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But luckily I have a very supportive husband, and he helps me get through the donut the great donut breakdown of probably 2019, 2018, I don't know.
Oh, that's funny. That's so funny.
All right, guys. Well, it's 6:15, so I guess we should probably end pretty soon. You guys want to tell people where they can go if they want to come follow you, and tell them a little bit, just a little brief, maybe 30-second blurb.
All right, I guess I'll start. So my YouTube channel is called Midlife Carnivore, and I have been trying to recover from severe morbid obesity and mast cell activation syndrome. And I just share my journey on my channel. And I try to do a little bit of education. I'm really working on getting some iodine videos out about iodine and the carnivore diet. And I've got some histamine and carnivore diet videos out there. And so come see me if you want.
Yay. Okay, Carrie.
Well, I started low carb in 2015, worked my way down and sort of slid into carnivore by accident at the end of last year when a friend gifted me with a bunch of meat. And so my channel just documents my journey of discovering that, oh my gosh, I no longer have anxiety. I feel so much better. I have great energy. And so I just combined my love of heavy metal music with my quirky personality and my journey. And that's all on my channel. And it's Metamorphosis with an O, like it's meat O, not meat ah. It throws people off. But anyway, come join me. You never know what you're going to find on my channel. Sometimes it's kind of off the wall, but it's fun.
I love it. Okay, so I'm Kim, Nurse Kim on YouTube, and lately my channel seems to be about having a book club weekly, which, hey, this is great because I need some content, and I have really been falling behind on my, on putting out the videos. I've got several videos in mind that I want to put out, and it's like, with me, I'm kind of a little OCD, which actually Carnivore has also helped, by the way. But the stars have to align for me to do things sometimes. And so anyway, this helps me because it forces me to, you have to read these chapters and you have to show up at this time. So yeah, it's good for me. But yeah, come over and see me, and I would love to talk to you guys about the low carb diet because it's my new hobby. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to add is I don't know if I should tell anybody this because, sometimes when you're going to do something, you probably shouldn't tell people because then it kind of like, I don't want to say it like jinxes it, but, people want to throw in their opinions and stuff on it. So I don't want any of that. But I am getting ready to, I think I'm going to go to the Primal Health Coach.
Yay!
So, and I'm so excited about it.
Yes, do it. You put it out there to the universe. Put it out there. You're going to do it. That's just it. You're doing it.
Yeah, I'm doing it. You're right, Carrie. And right now, I mean, I don't work for them. I don't have any kind of affiliate link or anything, but right now they have half off for their like Black Friday sale.
I don't even know who that is.
Oh, okay. So
I might just do it for the heck of it.
Yeah, I'll tell you after, but it's just Google like Primal Health Coach.
Okay.
Yeah. They have several programs and like certifications and stuff. It's really cool though. But basically they teach you not just like keto or carnivore, but like a lot of different ways that people can eat that would be within like the proper human diet spectrum, and maybe a little bit beyond what we would consider. But
is it to become a health coach?
Yeah.
It's to become a health coach. Okay.
Yeah, just to help people with their just to help people along on their journey with their weight loss or whatever they're doing it for. And food intolerances. It's kind of like, to me, it reminds me of like a functional medicine health coach,
Cool.
And the thing is, you're already a nurse. And so adding that credential would just really be the oomph.
Yeah,
that people would take you seriously because kind of like what you were talking about, the physician being of allopathic physician, but then
functional
a functional medicine practitioner. So then it's the same thing. So yeah. Oh, that's wonderful, Kim. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
I'm like really excited about it, but I don't know. I haven't pressed the button yet. I'm like, I keep like filling out all my information and I'm like, I don't know why. I don't know. It's
do they have a time limit? Like I'm sure it's all online and stuff. So, it's just, you just work your way through it, right?
So they only release like one module a week to you. But then as far as like how long you have to do it, you have access to it forever.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing it. I don't know that anybody would ever take advice from me in that way, but I could better understand.
I think they would. I mean, Carrie, you're very knowledgeable. You always add a lot to our discussions.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm trying to remember what the guy's name is, but you know that girl on YouTube, her name's Health Coach Kate.
Mm-hmm.
She did the Primal Health Coaching program. It's the Primal Health Coach Institute. And what is that guy's name? The man that came up with it. He's the one that wrote the book about primal.
Oh, is it Mark Sisson?
Yes. No, not Mark Sisson.
He did the Primal Blueprint. Wasn't that what he did?
Was it Mark Sisson? Yeah, it is Mark Sisson. Sorry. There's so many of these people. I can't keep up with all of them. It's Mark Sisson.
I know.
I guess I better learn his name before I go do his program. I know.
Dr.
Barry. Yeah. Well, Dr. Barry's, his PhD mentors do this program, and Nisha did it as well. So it's really good.
Interesting. I'll have to hear it. Awesome.
All right. Well,
what chapters are we doing for next week?
Oh, yeah. I think the next chapter is really long. I don't care. Do you guys want to do 2 or 3? It makes me no difference.
Let's do 2.
Can we be my doctor? I could go to nurse practitioner school and then maybe I could combine everything, right?
There you go.
Okay, so you want to do how many?
I think 2 is fine.
Yeah, I think 2 would work.
Okay. Well, let's do 2 then. So let's see, what chapters are those?
10 and 11.
10 and 11.
Insulin
All right,
resistance, the major player. Ooh, okay.
All right.
Maybe
Well,
getting somewhere.
okay, then next Sunday, 10 and 11. And we will see you back here. And thank you, everybody, for coming and watching. And thank you, Lynn and Carrie, for being my co-hosts and for putting up with my tardiness today.
No one
But
would
although I have
ever
to say,
know.
I did pretty good, though. I think we
Yes.
were only like a couple minutes late.
You did very good.
I
Yes.
don't know how that happened, but anyway. All right, guys. Y'all have a good week, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.